On the eve of my son's wedding, I overheard his fiancée's cruel confessions. She called me pathetic, plotted my demise, and admitted she only wanted our family's money I had already given for their ring and wedding. My heart shattered, but I simply walked away, the seeds of a plan already forming. Now, I need to share this with you. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The air in the grand ballroom was thick with anticipation and the sweet scent of lilies. Tomorrow was the day my son, Leo, would marry Serafina. I had been fluttering about all morning, overseeing the final touches for the wedding reception, my heart swelling with a mix of joy and a touch of melancholy. My only son was embarking on a new chapter, and while it meant a shift in our relationship, I was excited for his happiness. I was carrying a box of delicate wedding favors, small, intricately designed glass doves, toward the main hall when I heard voices from the adjacent bridal suite. The door was ajar, and laughter spilled out, catching my attention. Serafina's voice, unmistakable, carried above the others. I hesitated, not wanting to intrude. But then a phrase snagged me, freezing me in my tracks. Honestly, I'll probably need a blindfold to survive the honeymoon. Serafina giggled, and a wave of hushed laughter followed. But at least his family has money. Right? That makes a lot of things tolerable. My hand instinctively tightened on the box. What? My mind struggled to process what I had just heard. Was she joking? My initial warm feelings for Serafina, the girl who had charmed my son, began to curdle. I moved closer, drawn by a morbid curiosity, an unshakable dread settling in my chest. His mother is pathetic, though, Serafina continued, her voice dropping slightly, but still perfectly audible, always hovering, trying to be everyone's best friend. I swear, after the wedding, I'm setting some serious boundaries. No babysitting for her. No interfering with our lives. She'll back off eventually. The words struck me like physical blows. Pathetic? Hovering? My attempts to be supportive, to welcome her into our family, dismissed so callously. My dreams of doting on future grandchildren, of being an integral part of their family life, shattered in an instant. The raw sting of her contempt pierced through my mother's heart. Then came the holidays. Oh, and holidays, Serafina mused. We'll alternate, of course. She can spend Christmas with her book club or whatever old ladies do when they're not trying to run their grown son's life. More laughter. The vision of our cherished family Christmases, full of warmth and tradition, dissolved into a bleak, lonely image of me alone with a book. The sheer dismissiveness, the casual cruelty of it, made my stomach churn. But the worst was yet to come. Honestly, Leo's a sweet guy, Serafina admitted, a hint of boredom in her tone. But attraction? Not really a factor. He's a meal ticket, ladies. And his family's money? That makes a lot of things tolerable. Indeed, my breath hitched. My son, the kindest, most loving man I knew, was being used. He was a meal ticket. The girl he adored, the woman he was about to make his wife, felt no attraction to him, saw him only as a means to an end. The pain for Leo was almost unbearable, a hot, searing agony. At that exact moment, my grip faltered. The box of delicate glass doves slipped from my numb fingers, clattering loudly against the polished marble floor. The sound was sharp, definitive, abruptly silencing the laughter in the bridal suite. A sudden gasp came from within. Panic seized me. I immediately dropped to my knees, scrambling to gather the favors, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Each shattered piece on the floor mirrored the fragments of my heart. "Who's there?" Serafina's voice, sharp with irritation, cut through the silence. I didn't answer. I merely pretended to be preoccupied with the broken favors. My head bowed, my face hidden behind a curtain of hair. My mind, however, was reeling, trying to make sense of the monstrous conversation I had just overheard. Then came the truly chilling part. "Oh, and I give Alara about 10 years, Serafina said, a cold, calculating edge to her voice. 15 if she's unlucky. Then the inheritance will be truly ours, all ours. Less hovering, more spending." My blood ran cold. She was planning for my death. She was calculating the inheritance, eagerly anticipating the day I would be gone, all so she could get her hands on our family's wealth. The sheer depravity of it left me breathless. It was at that moment I remembered the $5,000 I had given Leo for Serafina's engagement ring and the $50,000 I had already paid for the wedding expenses. This wasn't generosity. It was an investment in Serafina's greed, using my own inheritance to fund her lavish plans. I had unknowingly contributed to my own demise, as she saw it. "You're going to hell, girl," one of her friends joked, a nervous giggle in her voice. "I know," Serafina replied, a casual shrug implied in her tone. "But I'll be rich in hell." I bit back a cry, a sob, anything that would reveal my presence. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drum against the sudden, terrifying reality. I gathered the last of the favors, my fingers aching, and scurried away, my back pressed against the wall, until I was out of sight. The words pathetic and hovering echoed in my ears, but now, they didn't just hurt, they fueled a quiet fury. I had to act. I somehow made it home, the familiar walls of my house feeling alien. The magnitude of Serafina's deception, her cold-hearted calculations, weighed on me like a suffocating blanket. My son, my beautiful, trusting son, was about to marry a viper. How could I expose her without utterly destroying his happiness, his dream? The dilemma gnawed at me, a relentless torment. That night, sleep was an impossibility. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the darkness amplifying the horrifying words I had heard. My mind raced, reviewing every interaction, every smile, every seemingly sweet gesture from Serafina. It was all a performance. By dawn, a decision solidified. I couldn't let this stand. I had to investigate Serafina's true character, to gather undeniable proof. The rehearsal dinner that evening was an exercise in torture. Serafina, draped in a white gown that shimmered under the dim lights, played the part of the loving, devoted fiancée flawlessly. She laughed at Leo's jokes, squeezed his hand affectionately, and even offered me a warm hug, whispering about how excited she was to finally be family. Each saccharine word, each fake smile, made me want to vomit. I watched her, my eyes now seeing through her elaborate charade, a chilling realization of her manipulative genius. Later, as she stepped away from Leo to speak with her maid of honor, I found myself inadvertently near them. "It's just paperwork, really," Serafina murmured, adjusting a stray curl. "The biggest hurdle is getting through tomorrow without a hitch. Once it's done, it's done. Just paperwork. My son's vows, his hopes, his future, reduced to a transaction." She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes briefly meeting mine before she dismissed me with a shrug. "Leo's mom is harmless, if a bit clingy, but I'll make sure she backs off once we set our boundaries." The words were a fresh stab, but this time, they ignited something fierce within me. Harmless? Clingy? They were mistaken. This mother, this harmless woman, was about to become anything but. The sun had barely begun to paint the sky with hues of dawn, but for Alara, the night had been an agonizing eternity. The words from the bridal suite and the rehearsal dinner replayed in her mind like a broken record, each phrase a fresh stab to her already wounded heart. Meal ticket, just paperwork. 10 years, maybe 15. The wedding, meant to be a joyous occasion, now loomed as a terrifying precipice, a dark void into which her beloved son, Leo, was about to step. She had made a decision, a desperate one born of a mother's fierce protective instinct. She couldn't stand by and watch Leo's life be destroyed by Serafina's calculated deceit. But how to stop it? How to expose a woman who wore a mask of charming innocence so perfectly? Leo adored Serafina. He would never believe such accusations without concrete, undeniable proof. Her son's happiness was paramount, but so was his safety from this predatory woman. With shaking hands, Alara scrolled through her phone. Private investigator. The term felt illicit, cloak and dagger, but what other choice did she have? Time was a luxury she didn't possess. The wedding was less than 24 hours away. She found a listing for a highly rated agency, specializing in discreet investigations, and with a deep breath, made the call. Within an hour, a woman arrived at Alara's quiet suburban home. Detective Anya Sharma was not what Alara had expected. Instead of a grizzled, trench-coat-wearing figure, Anya was a sharp, observant woman in her late 30s, dressed in smart, casual attire. Her eyes, however, held a depth that spoke of countless untold stories and a quiet determination. "Mrs. Hayes," Anya greeted, her voice calm and professional as she took a seat opposite Alara in the living room. "Thank you for seeing me so early. How can I help?" Alara clasped her trembling hands, her voice barely a whisper at first, then gaining strength as the urgency of her situation took over. "Detective Sharma, my son is getting married tomorrow. And I believe his fiancée is not who she says she is." Anya nodded, pulling out a notepad and pen. "Go on." Alara recounted the horrifying snippets she had overheard, the cruel words, the casual dismissal of Leo's love, the chilling calculations about her own inheritance. As she spoke, the raw emotion of betrayal and fear for her son choked her words, but she pushed through. "Her name is Serafina Michelle Brennan," Alara stated, trying to sound as composed as possible. "She's 26. She told us she's from Portland, Oregon, and that she has a marketing degree. She works in digital marketing here, but I don't know much more than that." I never thought to question it." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "I was just so happy for Leo." Anya diligently scribbled down the details. Her expression remained neutral, but Alara could sense a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "You believe she's marrying your son for financial gain then?" Anya clarified, her gaze steady. "It's not just that," Alara insisted, her voice tight with anguish. "She spoke of me. Of my death. As a way to get the family money sooner. She has no love for Leo. She called him a meal ticket. She said their marriage was just paperwork. I cannot let my son tie himself to someone so heartless." Anya paused, her pen hovering over the paper. "Mrs. Hayes, I understand the gravity of your concerns. However, you're asking me to uncover potentially damning information in less than 24 hours. The wedding is tomorrow, you said." Alara felt a cold dread wash over her. "Yes, I know it's an impossible task, but I have to try." "Please, Detective Sharma. Isn't there anything you can do? Even a small lead, something to show Leo before it's too late." Anya closed her notepad for a moment, meeting Alara's desperate gaze. "It's extremely tight. Full background checks take time, deeper investigations even longer. We might be able to find some basic public records, social media discrepancies, anything that immediately sticks out as inconsistent with her claims. But it won't be a deep dive." She thought for a moment, then reopened her notepad. "However, given the circumstances, I'm willing to work through the night. If there's something to find quickly, we'll find it." A fragile sliver of hope, quickly overshadowed by a fresh wave of anxiety, passed through Alara. Thank you so much," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "My greatest fear is that if I try to stop this without irrefutable proof, Leo will never forgive me. He'll see me as a meddling mother, trying to ruin his happiness. He's so in love with her." The thought of losing her son's trust, of alienating him, was almost as painful as the thought of Serafina destroying his life. Anya's expression softened slightly, a hint of empathy in her professional demeanor. She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Mrs. Hayes, consider this. What if you don't try to stop it, and she does destroy his life? What then? Would you be able to live with yourself, knowing you had a chance to prevent it?" The question hung in the air, potent and undeniable. Anya's words cut through Alara's fear of Leo's anger, exposing a deeper, more profound fear. The regret of inaction, the thought of watching her son suffer, knowing she could have intervened, was far more terrifying than any temporary rift between them. A surge of resolve, cold and clear, washed over Alara. Anya was right. Her love for Leo demanded action, regardless of the consequences for their relationship in the short term. Her son's future, his very well-being, depended on her. "You're right," Alara said, her voice stronger now. filled with a newfound determination. "You are absolutely right. I have to find the truth, whatever it takes. I have to protect my son. Please, Detective Sharma, find whatever you can. My son's future depends on it." Anya nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "I'll be in touch the moment I have anything. Stay by your phone, and try to keep your usual routine as best you can today. Don't give her any reason to suspect you're on to her." Alara watched as Anya left, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirling within her. The clock was ticking, the wedding march a terrifying countdown. She was a mother on a mission, a desperate woman racing against time, praying that the truth would emerge before it was too late. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a soft, hesitant glow through Alara's bedroom window. It was the wedding day. For hours, she had tossed and turned. The events of the previous day, the conversation with Detective Sharma, and the agonizing uncertainty swirling in her mind. Her phone, clutched tightly in her hand, had become a lifeline she dreaded to check, yet longed to hear ring. Precisely at 6 a.m., the screen lit up with Anya Sharma's name. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage, she took a shaky breath, preparing herself for whatever news awaited, and answered. "Mrs. Hayes." Anya's voice was clear, crisp, devoid of any pretense. "I have some information for you. And it's significant. Tell me," Alara managed, her throat suddenly dry. "Serafina Michelle Brennan," Anya began, her tone shifting to a more formal, report-like cadence. "She's been married twice before, Mrs. Hayes. Both times to older, wealthy men." The words hit Alara like a physical blow, a cold shock spreading through her. Twice? Serafina had never mentioned a previous marriage, let alone two. Leo certainly had no idea. A wave of nausea washed over Alara, but she pushed it down, urging Anya to continue. "Her first marriage was to Arthur Beaumont," Anya continued, "a 53-year-old real estate developer. They were married for just under 2 years before divorcing. Serafina received a settlement of $500,000. $500,000. Alara's mind reeled. This wasn't just a gold digger, this was a professional. Her second husband was Gregory Vance. Anya went on, her voice unchanging, detailing the grim facts. A 4-5-year-old tech executive. Again, the marriage lasted less than 2 years. Serafina walked away with $700,000 this time. $700,000. A total of $1.2 million from 2 short marriages. Alara felt a chill deeper than the morning air. This was a pattern, a carefully constructed scheme. "And her name," Anya added, almost as an afterthought. "Serafina Michelle Rogers. Her birth name. She became Hawthorne after her first marriage, then Morrison after her second. Brennan, as you know, is her mother's maiden name, which she reverted to after her last divorce." Alara gripped the phone tighter. 3 name changes. 3 identities. It wasn't just deception. It was a complete erasure of her past, a deliberate effort to hide her true nature. "And her current financial situation?" Alara asked, her voice barely a whisper, dreading the answer. "Her marketing job is only part-time, Mrs. Hayes," Anya confirmed, her voice grim. "It pays a meager $30,000 a year. Our checks show she's in significant debt. She's burned through both settlements, living a lavish lifestyle she can't sustain. She's desperate for another wealthy husband, Mrs. Hayes. Your son is her next target." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a terrifying picture. Serafina wasn't just looking for money, she was in a financial hole so deep that Leo was her last resort, her next escape route. The casual cruelty she displayed during the overheard conversation now made perfect, terrifying sense. It wasn't just disdain, it was the calculated ruthlessness of a predator. "That's not all," Anya continued, her voice hardening. Both ex-husbands reported similar patterns of behavior during their divorce proceedings. Emotional manipulation, isolating them from friends and family, controlling their finances, and suicide threats when the divorces were imminent. Alara gasped, a horrified sound escaping her lips. Suicide threats. This wasn't just a gold digger. This was a dangerous, manipulative woman, capable of psychological abuse, willing to use emotional blackmail to get what she wanted. Leo, with his kind heart and trusting nature, was utterly defenseless against such a person. The realization solidified. Serafina was a predator, and her son was her prey. "I'm sending you all the documents now, Mrs. Hayes," Anya said, her tone empathetic but firm. "Marriage certificates, divorce records, court documents from both cases. It's all there. Undeniable proof." "Thank you, Anya," Alara whispered, tears finally escaping her eyes, a mixture of horror and a strange, cold relief. The truth, however brutal, was finally laid bare. She hung up, her hands still shaking, and immediately checked her email. Sure enough, a thick file was attached. She opened it, scrolling through page after page of official documents. Names, dates, settlement figures, court transcripts mentioning manipulation and threats. It was all there, black and white, utterly damning. 6 hours. 6 hours until Leo was to stand at the altar, oblivious to the viper awaiting him. How could she tell him? How could she present this avalanche of betrayal without him seeing it as a desperate attempt to sabotage his happiness, to tear down his dreams? He would be devastated, angry, possibly even lash out at her. The thought of his pain, of the shattering of his idealized image of Serafina, was almost unbearable. Her first instinct was to call him, to wake him up, and lay out the terrible truth. She dialed his number, her finger hovering over the call button for a moment before pressing it. It rang, once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. "Hey, Mom!" Leo's cheerful voice filled the air. "It's my wedding day, so I'm probably ignoring all calls that aren't Serafina's or emergencies. Leave a message, I'll call you back." An emergency. This was the biggest emergency of his life. But what kind of message could she leave? "Don't marry her, son. She's a serial gold digger who wants you dead, and has been married twice before, and manipulated her ex-husbands with suicide threats." It would sound insane, like a bitter mother consumed by jealousy. He wouldn't believe it. He would dismiss it as a hysterical fabrication. She ended the call without leaving a message. The time for a phone call was over. This required more than a desperate plea. This required careful, undeniable presentation. Alara slowly rose from her bed, the elegant mother of the groom dress laid out on a chair for her. She walked towards it, her movements stiff, mechanical. The day she had anticipated with such joy now felt like a walk to an execution. She would put on that dress. She would go to that wedding. But she wouldn't just be attending. She would be fighting for her son's life, for his future. She knew, with chilling certainty, that she was about to make a decision that would change everything, not just for Leo and Serafina, but for their entire family. The battle had officially begun. The grand entrance to the Riverside Country Club shimmered under the mid-morning sun, adorned with white roses and flowing silk. It was a picture of perfect elegance, a setting designed for a fairy tale. Alara arrived hours before the ceremony, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, a manila envelope clutched in her hands like a sacred, yet terrible, relic. She found Brenda, the event coordinator, bustling about, a flurry of organized energy. "Brenda," Alara began, forcing a smile. "I was hoping to confirm something. As the mother of the groom, I was thinking of saying a few words during the reception. A little toast, you know, to the happy couple." Brenda, ever professional, consulted her clipboard. "Of course, Mrs. Hayes. We've got a slot for toasts after the main course. Just let me know if you need anything at all." "Perfect," Alara replied, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. She knew what she was about to do. The decision had been made in the dark hours of the night, solidified by Anya Sharma's damning evidence. As guests began to fill the elegant ballroom, their faces alight with joy and anticipation, Alara felt the immense weight of her choice. Each smiling face, each congratulatory whisper, amplified the dread. She was about to shatter this beautiful illusion, to bring a hurricane into what should have been a day of pure happiness. But it had to be done. For Leo, the ceremony itself was a blur of heightened emotions. Serafina, radiant and breathtaking in her intricate lace gown, glided down the aisle. A vision of angelic beauty, she looked every inch the fairy tale princess, her eyes sparkling, her smile a beacon of supposed happiness. It was a flawless performance, so convincing that for a fleeting moment, Alara doubted herself. But then the echoes of meal ticket and just paperwork cut through the illusion, hardening Alara's resolve. Leo's face, however, was a tableau of pure, unadulterated joy and adoration. His eyes, usually so keen and discerning, were utterly lost in Serafina's beauty, reflecting a love so profound it broke Alara's heart. He truly believed he had found his soulmate, his forever love. The sight was almost unbearable, confirming the devastating blow she was about to deliver. Serafina's vows were a masterful display of feigned emotion. She spoke of everlasting love, of building a family, of unwavering devotion. Each word was perfectly articulated, each pause strategically placed, each tear exquisitely shed. To the unsuspecting crowd, it was a testament to deep affection. To Alara, it was a performance, a hollow script spoken by a brilliant actress. Every empty promise echoed the cold calculations of a predator. The ceremony concluded, and the guests moved to the reception. The atmosphere was celebratory, filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Alara sat at the head table, exchanging polite smiles. But her mind was fixed on the approaching moment. The manila envelope lay on her lap, a silent ticking bomb. After the main course, as dessert was being served, the moment arrived. Brenda approached, signaling it was time for toasts. Alara took a deep breath, picked up her wine glass, and, with a subtle movement, slipped the manila envelope under her arm. Her legs felt like lead, but she stood, managing a small, trembling smile. "If I may," Alara's voice, surprisingly steady, carried across the elegant ballroom, "I'd like to say a few words. To my son, Leo. I have always admired his integrity, his kind heart, and his unwavering belief in the good in people." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the smiling faces, then landing briefly on Leo, whose expression was pure love and pride. Then, her gaze shifted, settling on Serafina, who was beaming. "A mother's greatest responsibility," Alara continued, her voice gaining a quiet intensity, "is to protect her child, to guide them, to nurture them, and sometimes, to shield them from harm, even when that harm comes disguised as love." A ripple of uneasy murmurs spread through the room. Leo frowned, a hint of confusion clouding his joyful face. Serafina's smile faltered, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Alara then turned her full attention to Serafina, her voice clear and resonant. "Serafina," she began, the name now laced with a cold formality. "You speak so beautifully of love and family, but there are some things, some chapters, you've omitted from your story. Perhaps you'd like to tell everyone here about your first husband, Arthur Beaumont, or would you prefer I do the honors?" The blood drained from Serafina's face. She turned completely white, her jaw going slack, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. The perfect facade shattered, revealing a raw, terrified vulnerability. "Mom, what are you doing?" Leo's voice, sharp with alarm and confusion, cut through the sudden, stunned silence of the room. He half rose from his seat, his hand reaching for her. Alara met his gaze, her heart aching, but her resolve unyielding. "I'm saving your life, my son." Then, Alara addressed the stunned guests, her voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow. "Serafina Michelle Brennan, or should I say, Serafina Michelle Rogers, or Hawthorne, or Morrison, was married at 21 years old to Arthur Beaumont, a 53-year-old real estate developer. Their marriage lasted a mere 18 months, concluding with a divorce settlement of $500,000. Gasps filled the room, audible and sharp. The festive atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a suffocating silence punctuated by shocked whispers. Serafina's parents, seated near her, looked utterly horrified, their faces mirroring the growing confusion and disgust on the faces of the guests. "But that's not all," Alara pressed on, her voice unwavering. After shedding the name Hawthorne, she became Morrison, married to Gregory Vance, a 4-5-year-old tech executive. Another older, wealthy man, another short marriage, lasting less than 2 years, and another generous settlement, $700,000. The room erupted, a cacophony of incredulous exclamations, furious whispers, and outright shock. Leo's face turned ashen, his jaw tight, his eyes wide with a combination of disbelief, hurt, and a terrible dawning betrayal. He stared at Serafina, then back at Alara, his world crumbling around him. "You're lying!" Serafina shrieked, finding her voice, a raw, desperate sound devoid of her usual charm. "She's lying! This is all lies!" Alara didn't flinch. She simply raised the manila envelope, pulling out a stack of neatly printed documents. "These are public records, Serafina. Marriage certificates, divorce decrees, all available for anyone to see." She held them up for all to witness, the undeniable proof shimmering under the ballroom lights. Serafina stared at the documents, then at the horrified faces around her, her carefully constructed world collapsing. The mask was gone. The performance was over. Finally speechless, without a single convincing lie left to tell, she pushed back her chair, sending it clattering to the floor. Tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated fury and humiliation. She stumbled, then ran, her pristine white gown a blur as she fled the ballroom, leaving Leo, her family, and the ruined wedding behind. Silence descended, heavy and thick. All eyes turned to Leo. He stood there, alone at the head table, the wreckage of his dreams scattered around him. He looked at Alara, his eyes devoid of love, filled instead with a pain so profound it ripped through her. He looked at her like she was a stranger who had just destroyed his entire world. The dust has settled from that dramatic wedding day, but the emotional scars run deep. If you've been gripped by this story so far, don't miss what happens next. Please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to hear how this saga unfolds. Your support means the world to me. The weeks following the wedding were the longest, most agonizing period of Alara's life. The echoes of shattered glass and gasps of shock still rang in her ears, but far more painful was the silence that followed. Leo, her beloved son, had moved out of his apartment that very night, cutting all ties with her. Her calls went unanswered, then met with a disconnected signal. He had changed his phone number. Social media, once a casual way for them to connect, showed her blocked from all his accounts. When she tried to visit his workplace, she was politely, but firmly, informed that Leo had requested she not be allowed entry. The devastation was profound. Alara had saved him from a predator, but in doing so, she had lost him. Her heart ached with a grief so sharp, it felt physical. She would sit in her quiet home, staring at old photographs of Leo, remembering their laughter, their shared secrets, the easy camaraderie they had always enjoyed. Now, it was all gone. She knew, deep in her soul, that she had done the right thing. The truth, however brutal, had to be revealed, but knowing it didn't lessen the crushing weight of his absence, the pain of his perceived betrayal, she mourned the loss of their once close relationship every single day. Despite the emotional turmoil, Alara remained in contact with Detective Anya Sharma. Anya, ever efficient and professional, continued to provide updates, painting an even darker picture of Serafina's desperate machinations. "Mrs. Hayes." Anya's voice came through the phone one afternoon. "Serafina has been busy. We've had reports she attempted to access Leo's bank accounts, claiming she had joint access as his fiancé. Luckily, the bank flagged it as suspicious given the circumstances." Alara's breath hitched. Her son had dodged yet another bullet. "And the furniture?" she asked, remembering the apartment Leo had moved out of. "Yes," Anya confirmed. She also tried to remove some furniture from his old apartment, claiming they were wedding gifts, despite them clearly being Leo's long-standing possessions. The landlord intervened, thankfully. "She's incredibly brazen," Mrs. Hayes. She's desperate, Alara corrected, the chilling realization solidifying. Precisely, Anya agreed. Our deeper dive into her finances confirms it. She's deeply in debt. The previous settlements are gone, spent on a lifestyle she couldn't maintain. This marriage wasn't just about additional luxury for her. It was about survival. She needed it to work. She was cornered. The thought sent a shiver down Alara's spine. Serafina was not just a manipulative woman. She was a cornered animal, capable of anything. Anya then shared details from her conversations with Serafina's previous victims. I managed to speak with Arthur Beaumont, Serafina's first ex-husband, Anya reported. He was initially reluctant, but once he understood why I was calling, he opened up. He confirmed her manipulative tactics. He spoke of how she gradually isolated him from his friends and even some of his family members. She slowly took control of his finances, making him feel dependent on her for decisions. Alara listened, a cold dread twisting in her stomach. Isolation, financial control, the signs of psychological abuse were stark. Leo, with his open heart, would have been completely vulnerable to such tactics. And Gregory Vance's attorney, Anya continued, provided an even more disturbing detail. During their separation and divorce proceedings, Serafina claimed she was pregnant to negotiate a larger settlement. It turned out to be a complete fabrication, a lie, meant to exploit his emotions and secure more money. The revelation struck Alara with a profound sense of horror and a wave of almost overwhelming relief. A false pregnancy. The depths of Serafina's deceit were even more profound than she had initially imagined. This wasn't just about money. It was about a calculated, ruthless disregard for human emotion, for truth, for life itself. Alara hung up the phone, her hand trembling. The grief for her lost relationship with Leo was still a raw wound, but a new understanding settled over her. She hadn't just saved him from a bad marriage. She had saved him from a life of manipulation, from financial ruin, from emotional torment, and potentially, from the heartbreak of a fabricated child. She had saved him from a woman who saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone, a means to an end. The price of that salvation was her son's current resentment, his anger, his absence. But what was that compared to the destruction Serafina would have wrought? The silence from Leo was deafening, a constant reminder of the chasm between them. Yet, with each new piece of information, Alara felt a quiet, fierce conviction solidify within her. She might have broken Leo's heart, but she had also protected it from a far more devastating fate. Now, all she could do was wait, and hope that one day, her son would understand. 3 weeks had passed since the disastrous wedding, and the world had grown quieter, colder, for Alara. The void left by Leo's absence was a constant, aching wound. One afternoon, as Alara watered her wilting roses, a shadow fell over her. She looked up to see a figure standing on her porch. It was Serafina, but a far cry from the radiant bride of mere weeks ago. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes rumpled, and her eyes, once sparkling with cunning, now held a desperate, hollow look. I need to talk to Leo, Serafina demanded, her voice hoarse, devoid of its usual charm. I know he's here. Let me in. Alara's spine stiffened. The pain of Leo's estrangement warred with the protective fury she felt for him. Leo isn't here, Serafina, Alara stated calmly, her voice firm. And even if he were, he has nothing to say to you. Leave him alone. Serafina's desperation quickly morphed into a furious rage. You bitter old woman. You sabotaged everything. You were just jealous, weren't you? You couldn't stand to see Leo happy without you as the center of his universe. Her words were laced with venom, flung at Alara like stones. Alara met her gaze, her expression unyielding. You think this was about jealousy? She asked quietly, a cold certainty in her voice. I know everything, Serafina. I overheard you. Before the wedding, in the bridal suite, at the rehearsal dinner, I heard every word. About the blindfold for the honeymoon, about Leo being a meal ticket, about my pathetic hovering, about my death, and the inheritance. The color drained from Serafina's face, leaving it ashen. Her carefully constructed mask, which had momentarily slipped with desperation, now completely shattered. The bravado dissolved, replaced by a naked, terrified realization. The cunning glint in her eyes was extinguished, replaced by a raw, startled fear. That was just wedding stress, Serafina stammered, scrambling for an excuse, her voice a pathetic whisper. I didn't mean any of it. Alara shook her head, a deep sadness settling over her. No, Serafina. You meant it. You already were hurting him. You just hadn't finished the job yet. Serafina slumped against the doorframe, all fight draining out of her. Her shoulders sagged, and she stared at the ground, defeated. He was my last chance, she mumbled, almost to herself. I'm out of options. A flicker of pity, unwelcome and surprising, stirred in Alara's heart. To be so utterly devoid of compassion, yet so utterly desperate. It was a tragic, monstrous combination, but pity couldn't erase the damage. Without another word, Alara stepped back and slowly closed the door, sealing Serafina out. The silence that followed was once again deafening. But this time, it was Serafina's silence, not Leo's. The predator had been repelled, but the true problem, her son's estrangement, remained a gaping wound. 4 weeks after the aborted wedding, Alara knew she couldn't endure the silence any longer. She needed to understand, to bridge the chasm. There was only one person who might be able to help. Mark, Leo's best man and closest friend. He had been there, witnessed the entire chaotic unraveling. She called Mark, her voice thick with worry. He answered, his tone subdued. Mark, how is Leo? I haven't heard from him. A sigh came through the phone. He's not doing well, Alara. He's like a ghost. He barely leaves his apartment. He's punishing himself, I think. For being so completely fooled, Alara's heart ached. Does he understand now, about Serafina? He understands she lied. Yes, Mark said, his voice hesitant. He's seen all the documents you had. He knows about the past marriages, the settlements, everything. He knows she was a con artist. But he's angry, Alara, not just at her, but at you. Why? Alara whispered, bracing herself. He says you should have told him privately, Mark explained, his words careful. He believes you took away his choice, that you humiliated him in front of everyone, instead of trusting him to make his own decision once he knew the truth. He said it was his wedding, his life, and you snatched it away in the most public, devastating way possible. Mark paused, then added, his voice tinged with a solemn understanding. That's not something a man gets over easily. Alara. The public shame. It's really gotten to him. The phone call ended, but Mark's words echoed in Alara's mind, haunting her. Took away his choice. Humiliated him. She had known the public exposure would be painful, but she had believed it was the only way to break through Serafina's spell, to deliver an undeniable, irrefutable blow. She had sacrificed their relationship for his safety. Was the cost too high? Had she truly destroyed his world, as his eyes had suggested that day? 2 months after the wedding that never was, Anya Sharma called again. This time, her voice held a note of triumph. Mrs. Hayes, I have some news that might bring you some peace. Serafina Michelle Brennan, alias Rogers, Hawthorne, Morrison, was arrested in Nevada last night. Romance scam. She was attempting to defraud an elderly gentleman of his life savings. Alara felt a strange mix of vindication and profound sadness. Serafina, caught in the act, finally facing justice. It was proof, undeniable proof, that Alara had been right all along. That she had indeed saved her son from a terrible fate. The news made local headlines. Her mugshot splashed across the evening news, detailing her history of fraud, the previous marriages, the patterns of manipulation. It was all there, laid bare for the world to see. This, Alara thought, this would surely convince Leo. This public confirmation of her true nature, beyond any doubt, would surely bring him back to her. He would see that she had saved him, that her actions, however painful, had been necessary. But Leo's response was not gratitude, not reconciliation. Instead, a few days after the news broke, Alara received an email from him. Short, formal, and devoid of emotion. He was selling his house. He was moving to another state. Somewhere far away. Somewhere even further from her. 4 months. 4 months of agonizing silence from her son. Alara found solace in the methodical rhythm of gardening, burying her grief and worry in the fertile soil. Her hands, usually so gentle, now worked with a fierce determination, pulling weeds, nurturing new life. One crisp autumn afternoon, as she pruned her roses, a shadow fell across the flower bed. She looked up to see Mark, Leo's best man, standing hesitantly by the gate. "Alara," Mark said, his voice quiet. "Leo doesn't know I'm here. But I had to come. He's destroying himself over this." Alara's heart seized. She dropped her trowel, wiping her hands on her apron. "Tell me, Mark. How is he?" Mark stepped closer, his face etched with concern. "He's not good. He's living like a ghost, Alara. Barely eating, barely sleeping. He's punishing himself for being so blind, so foolish." Alara listened, her chest tightening. This was the Leo she knew, the one who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, who would internalize every mistake. "There's more," Mark continued, his voice lowering. "You know Serafina tried to get money from him after the wedding, right?" Alara nodded. "Anya mentioned something about her trying to access his bank accounts and take furniture. It was worse than that," Mark revealed, his expression grim. "About 3 weeks after everything, Serafina contacted Leo's lawyer. She was demanding $40,000, claiming it was rightfully hers, joint assets from their intended marriage. It turns out, Leo, in his trusting way, had added her name to a small savings account they were setting up for their future, and he'd given her access to his credit cards, just in case of emergencies, while they were planning. That gave her enough of a legal loophole to make a claim." Alara felt a cold knot of dread. Leo's generosity, his complete faith, had almost cost him dearly. "Leo ended up paying her $15,000, Mark confessed, his voice heavy. "Just to make her disappear. To stop the harassment and the legal threats. He said he finally realized she would never stop exploiting him if he didn't pay her off. It was a cheaper price than a messy legal battle, apparently." A wave of relief mixed with simmering anger washed over Alara. $15,000 was a lot, but it was nothing compared to the millions Serafina had targeted. Leo had truly been on the precipice of financial ruin. "And then," Mark continued, taking a deep breath, "something else happened. Leo was contacted by Gregory Vance's law firm, Serafina's second ex-husband." Alara's eyes widened. "Why?" "Vance had been tracking Serafina, apparently," Mark explained. "Not just for closure, but because he was trying to recover a significant amount of money she had stolen from him beyond their divorce settlement. Over $100,000. Through joint accounts, business credit cards, even a car loan she took out in his name before they split." Leo had seen these documents, Mark explained. He had seen the detailed evidence of Serafina's systematic financial fraud, the way she had bled Gregory Vance dry long after their legal ties were supposedly severed. He saw how she had deliberately entangled his finances, setting him up for long-term exploitation. "When Leo saw all those documents," Mark said, his voice filled with gravity, "when he truly grasped the extent of her planned manipulation, how much worse it could have been, that's when it finally hit him. He understood it wasn't just about a one-time settlement. It was about a lifetime of calculated deceit. Vance's lawyers confirmed everything you suspected, Alara. Even the pregnancy lie. She used it to get more money out of Vance." Mark paused, meeting Alara's tear-filled gaze. "Leo finally understood what you saved him from. Not just the money, not just the humiliation of marrying a con artist. You saved him from years of psychological torture, from a woman who would have systematically stripped him bare, financially and emotionally, piece by piece." A sob escaped Alara's lips, a mix of relief and renewed anguish. Her son had been in far greater danger than even she had fully understood. He knows now, Alara, Mark said gently. He truly knows. But his silence isn't anger at you anymore. It's pride. It's shame. Embarrassed that his own mother saw through her so easily, so quickly, when he, the intelligent, discerning man he believes himself to be, was completely blinded by her. He feels foolish, weak. Alara stared at Mark, the pieces of Leo's behavior finally clicking into place, his withdrawal, his self-imposed exile, his decision to move away. It wasn't a rejection of her, but a punishment of himself. He asked me something, Mark said, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. He asked if you would ever forgive him for not believing you. The question hung in the air, a fragile bridge offering hope. Alara felt a profound emotional shift, a tectonic plate moving within her, the anger, the hurt, the sense of betrayal she had felt from Leo's estrangement, all melted away, replaced by a fierce, maternal tenderness. He wasn't angry at her. He was suffering from guilt. Tears streamed down Alara's face, but they were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of understanding, of immense relief, and of a rekindled hope. Her son wasn't lost to her. He was hurting, but he was finally seeing the truth, and he was seeking forgiveness. The path back to each other, though still shrouded in his shame, was finally visible. The realization that both she and Leo had been suffering, each convinced the other was unforgiving, brought Alara a new kind of sorrow, but also a profound sense of hope. The bridge between them wasn't burned. It was simply obscured by their individual pains and misconceptions. Mark's words had lifted a heavy veil from her eyes, showing her Leo's shame, not his anger. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Alara picked up her phone. She would not wait for him to come to her. She would reach out. She left a heartfelt voicemail for Leo, her voice thick with emotion, but steady. Leo, my dearest boy, I know you're hurting. I know you're angry, but please know this. My love for you is boundless and unconditional. It always has been, and it always will be. Our family. It's everything. Come home when you're ready. I'm here. I'll always be here. 3 days later, as Alara was in the kitchen, the comforting aroma of pot roast filling the air, their childhood Sunday meal, she heard the crunch of tires on her gravel driveway. Her heart leaped. She walked to the window and saw it. Leo's familiar car. He got out, looking thinner, a little older, the strain of the past months etched on his face. He stood there for a moment, hesitant, then slowly walked towards the front door. Alara opened it before he could knock. They stood in the doorway, simply staring at each other, the weight of everything unsaid hanging heavy between them. Then, Leo's composure cracked, his eyes welled up, and he stepped forward, pulling her into a tight, crushing embrace. Mom, he choked out, his voice raw with emotion. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Alara held him just as tightly, tears streaming down her own face. I'm sorry too, my love. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I'm sorry I took away your choice. Leo pulled back slightly, gripping her shoulders, his gaze firm. No. Don't you dare apologize for saving my life, Mom. Never. He stepped inside, and Alara led him to the living room. Leo sat, running a hand through his hair. Mark told me everything. He told me how much you went through, what you uncovered. He told me how you worried about me hating you. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. I was too proud, too ashamed, to even open your letters, to listen to your voicemails. I just shut down. I thought you had every right to hate me, Alara confessed, her voice soft. I destroyed your wedding day. You exposed a con artist who was planning to ruin my life, Leo corrected her firmly. There's a difference. I was trusting, Mom, not stupid. There's a difference. Then, Leo reached into his bag, pulling out a small, worn notebook. I found this among Serafina's things when I finally packed up my old apartment, he said, his voice grim. It's a handwritten list, titled, L Phase 1. Alara leaned forward, her heart pounding. Leo began to read, his voice devoid of emotion, as he recited the chilling bullet points. Get name on his bank accounts. Suggest therapy for his unhealthy attachment to his mother. Plan expensive European honeymoon. Begin discussing starting a family. Research Ilara's health history. Insurance. Convince him. Mother needs independence. Assisted living. Ilara gasped, a horrified sound trapped in her throat. The clinical coldness of it. The systematic plan to isolate Leo, to warehouse her, to erase her influence from his life. It wasn't just gold digging. It was psychological warfare, and that was just phase 1. Leo continued, his voice barely a whisper. Mark said Serafina's ex-husbands revealed phase 2 in court documents. Pregnancy scares, miscarriages requiring expensive treatments, gradual isolation from colleagues. Her goal was to make me completely dependent on her within 18 months to 2 years, just like she had done with Arthur and Gregory. Ilara could only stare at him, a cold dread seeping into her bones. She had saved him from an abyss far deeper and darker than she had ever imagined. Leo closed the notebook, his face etched with shame. I feel so stupid, Mom. So incredibly stupid. You knew. From one overheard conversation. You knew. And I was so blind, so caught up in her act. A mother knows, Ilara said, reaching for his hand, gently squeezing it. A mother knows when someone doesn't truly love her child. I saw the way she looked at you. You weren't a person to her, Leo. You were a project. A means to an end. Leo's eyes met hers, filled with a raw vulnerability. I'm so ashamed of how I treated you, Mom. Of blaming you for protecting my ego. It was just easier than facing the truth myself. We both made mistakes, my love, Ilara said softly, tears returning to her eyes. But we're here now. And that's all that matters. A new shadow fell over Leo's face. There's something else, Mom. Gregory Vance's case against Serafina. It goes to court next month. And I have to testify. Publicly. It's going to bring back all the humiliation, all the shame. Ilara's grip tightened on his hand. She looked at her son, seeing not a foolish man, but a courageous one, finally facing his truth. Then I'll be there, Leo, she declared, her voice strong and unwavering. Every single day. I'll be sitting in the front row. And if anyone dares to look at you with judgment, I'll tell them. I'll tell them you're the most decent, honest, generous man I know. She paused, a small, loving smile touching her lips. If loving someone makes you stupid, then every person who's ever been in love is an idiot. Leo managed a small, tearful smile of his own, a flicker of the old warmth returning to his eyes. The bridge was rebuilt, stronger than ever. The pot roast simmered on the stove, its comforting aroma filling the kitchen as Ilara and Leo talked late into the evening. They filled in the gaps of 4 agonizing months, sharing their individual struggles, their fears, and their quiet grief. Leo spoke of his therapist, a kind woman who helped him navigate the shame and betrayal. Ilara confided that she had found solace volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others rebuild their lives, which in turn helped her process her own trauma. Ilara looked at her son, his face still bearing the marks of his ordeal, but with a new clarity in his eyes. Those 4 months, Leo, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. I'd rather face a dozen Serafinas than lose you again. Leo reached across the table, taking her hand firmly. His eyes, once clouded with anger and hurt, now held a deep, unwavering love. You're never going to lose me again, Mom, he promised, his voice resolute. Family isn't about blood sometimes. It's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. A month later, Ilara fulfilled her promise. She sat in the front row of the courthouse, a silent, unwavering presence, as Serafina's trial for financial fraud began. Every day, she watched her son, Leo, testify. He spoke with a quiet strength and unwavering integrity, detailing Serafina's systematic attempts at financial manipulation and the chilling tactics she used to isolate him from his family and friends. He recounted finding the Phase 1 notebook, his voice firm, despite the obvious pain it caused him to relive. Serafina, a shadow of her former radiant self, sat emotionless as the evidence mounted against her. Her performance was finally over, replaced by a cold, defeated silence. After days of testimony, the verdict came swiftly. Serafina was found guilty on multiple counts of financial fraud. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered her to pay substantial restitution to her victims, including Leo and Gregory Vance. Leaving the courthouse, a sense of quiet triumph mixed with lingering exhaustion settled over them. Leo stopped outside, turning to face Alara, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice full of a profound gratitude. "Thank you for seeing the truth when I couldn't. For loving me enough to risk everything, even our relationship, to save me. You showed me what real love looks like." Alara's heart swelled, the weight of the past months finally lifting. This was the moment she had longed for, the validation that transcended any personal humiliation. Her son was safe, and their bond, though severely tested, had endured. 6 months later, life had begun to bloom again. Leo had moved back into his old house, the one filled with memories of growing up, and had started dating. He'd met Amelia, a kind widow with 2 teenage daughters, at a grief support group he'd continued to attend. Alara watched them together, observing the genuine affection, the quiet understanding, and the mutual respect that permeated their interactions. It was a stark contrast to the performative charm and underlying manipulation that had defined his relationship with Serafina. With Amelia, there was real laughter, real connection, real love. One afternoon, Leo confided in Alara, a warmth in his voice that had been absent for too long. "I've told Amelia everything, Mom. About Serafina, the wedding, everything. And you know what she said? She thinks you're amazing. She said she wishes she had a mother like you." Alara smiled, her heart doing a little flutter. "She sounds wonderful, Leo." "She is," he agreed, his eyes shining. He reached for her hand, his expression serious. "Mom, I know those 4 months were terrible, and I want to make up for them. For everything." Then, his voice softened, a hint of nervousness, but also immense certainty. "We're going to get married, and I want you to be fully involved in every step of the planning, if you want. And I want you to give the very first toast at our reception." Alara's breath hitched. The first toast. The ghost of the last wedding day, the shattered favors, the public confrontation. All rushed back. "I want everyone to know," Leo continued, his voice clear and firm, "that you taught me the difference between true love and manipulation. You taught me what it means to truly love someone, even when it's hard. And I want to honor you for that." Tears blurred Alara's vision. She reached out, pulling Leo into a tight embrace, her heart overflowing. They had gone through so much, endured such pain, but in the crucible of crisis, they had forged an invaluable relationship, one built on honesty, resilience, and unconditional forgiveness. Watching Leo laugh easily with Amelia's teenage daughters later that week, a picture of genuine happiness and renewed hope, Alara understood. Sometimes, the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings, and real love, the true, unwavering kind, was strong enough to survive anything, even the most brutal truth.